He walked in quiet, respectful, just trying to do the right thing. They laughed, mocked, dismissed him like he didn't matter. But what they didn't know was that the man in the hoodie wasn't just a veteran. He was a military intelligence analyst with clearance levels they'd never reach. And this time he wasn't just reporting a crime. He was watching who failed to care. The front door gave a low creak as Elijah Ford stepped inside, bringing with him the last breath of cool air before the Georgia heat sealed the building again. The precinct lobby was cramped, dimly lit, with a fan lazily turning above yellowed ceiling tiles. A dusty bulletin board sagged in the corner, missing posters, job fair flyers, a faded "See something, say something" sign curling at the edges. Elijah didn't flinch, didn't fidget. He moved with the stillness of someone used to observation, not attention. Cargo pants, plain tee, baseball cap low. He stepped up to the front desk and waited. Behind the glass partition, a white officer with a beer belly and a thick southern drawl looked up from his phone. His badge read, CPL, Mason. He didn't smile. "You lost?" he asked, tone flat. Elijah shook his head. "No, sir, I've got something to report. Might be nothing, but it's worth checking." The second officer, young buzz cut, leaning back in a swivel chair, glanced over with a smirk. "That right?" he said. "Well, let's hear it. 007. Elijah ignored the jab. "There's a warehouse off Route 3. Activity's been steady every third night. Vans with covered plates. No lights. People in and out. No uniforms. No IDs. And 2 of those vans showed up in a different town, 3 counties over, tied to an interstate trafficking case last year. I recognize the patterns." CPL, Mason blinked once, then snorted. "Patterns? You a detective now?" The younger cop chuckled. "Man's been binging Netflix. Seen one too many episodes of Narcos." More laughter. Elijah's eyes didn't leave them. "I served in signals intel. Army, 11 years. I've seen this setup before, different continent, same structure, and it ends the same way if no one listens." Buzzcut let out a low whistle. "Oh, so now we've got a military spy in here. Should we salute?" "No," Elijah replied evenly. "You should log the tip. That's all I'm asking." But no fingers moved toward a keyboard. No forms were pulled. Mason took a slow sip of coffee, then waved vaguely at the wall. "Tip line's over there. Drop your story in the bin. If it's real important, someone'll call." "Got it," Elijah said. He turned without another word. The laughter resumed as he stepped back into the heat. But he didn't walk to his car. He walked past it, around the corner, into the shade, where a small drone controller rested in his bag, and a recording device blinked silently in his pocket. He'd already started the audit, and this time they wouldn't even realize they'd failed, until it was written in their own voices. The house sat at the edge of town, tucked behind a line of tall pines that muffled the world. Elijah parked in the gravel drive, the crunch beneath his boots the only sound as he stepped onto the porch. No neighbors, no passing cars, just quiet, the kind he'd learned to work in. Inside he moved with purpose. The walls were bare, the furniture minimal. A laptop waited on the kitchen table, flanked by a second monitor, and a small hard case marked with military-grade encryption tags. He slid into the chair and powered it up. He didn't start with emotion. He started with protocol. Window 1, voice-to-text logs. Window 2, video timestamp scrub. Window 3, secure tunnel to a Homeland Security contact, listed only as double.read. The footage from the precinct played back in the corner of the screen. Mason's scoff. The laughter, the moment his report died under fluorescent lights. Elijah typed quickly, calmly. Suspected internal obstruction. Recommended independent review. Intel matches previous field indicators. He hit send. Reed wouldn't reply. He never did, but the file would be read. Across the room, a photo sat face down on the bookshelf. Elijah turned it over slowly. A girl in a marching band uniform, smiling wide, flute in hand. Ava Ford, 17, last seen walking home from practice. No witnesses, no leads. One tired detective, with more excuses than answers. That's why he came back. The army hadn't been a plan. It was a pivot. 11 years, 2 tours, 6 years in intelligence command. He wasn't the guy behind the gun. He was the one behind the data. Logistics webs, Disruption points. Trafficking patterns across Kandahar and Jalalabad. Crates mislabeled. Routes buried under humanitarian labels. He tracked networks that moved humans like cargo. But nothing prepared him for the silence that followed Ava. He tried civilian channels. He filed reports, made calls, hired a PI, who lasted 3 weeks before giving up. Locals said she probably ran off. Elijah knew better. When a tip placed a similar van near a warehouse just miles from her last known location, he came home. Not as a brother, as a system. Elijah clicked through the precinct's public logs. No report filed from today. Not even a line of text. Good. He opened a private map he'd built over the past 6 months. Dots, dates, movement clusters. The pattern was tightening. A third van, 2 new drop sites, and 1 precinct that laughed at the man who saw it. He zoomed in. The warehouse glowed red. Elijah leaned back. His jaw clenched. Eyes steady. They thought today was just a joke. They'd forgotten what military analysts are trained to do best. Wait. Watch. And never blink. The burner phones were already prepped. 3 of them. 1 for bait, 1 for fallback, 1 for silence. Elijah laid them out on the table like pieces on a chessboard. Each had a timed message ready to go, pre-written in stripped-down code, loaded with just enough detail to sound real, and just enough wrong to trigger panic if it leaked. The goal wasn't to fool the criminals. It was to catch the ones pretending to stop them. He triggered the first message at 8:17 p.m. sharp. It went to the precinct tip line. Unloading happening now. Old textile warehouse off Route 3. No plates. Armed. He logged the timestamp, then waited. Across the room his laptop blinked quietly. Custom AI filter running. Scraping emergency band chatter. Dispatch logs. Traffic cams. Precinct call records. Every ping meant something. Every silence meant more. At 8:36 the trap snapped. No dispatch sent. No unit deployed. But 1 outbound call left the precinct line. 67 seconds long. Routed through a proxy exchange and masked behind a private carrier. Elijah's jaw tightened. He pulled up a secondary tool. A forensic trace runner designed for foreign signal hops. Within 3 minutes, the masked number pinged a known burner linked to a previous trafficking suspect. One that Homeland had flagged 2 years ago but lost in the wind. They didn't ignore the tip. They warned the target. At 9:02 a traffic cam feed flickered. The warehouse gate opened. A dark van rolled out, taillights barely catching the edge of the frame. Elijah switched screens. The interior feed of the property, installed weeks earlier, hidden behind a busted electrical box, showed 3 men moving quickly, yanking crates into the van. No lights, no talking, just efficiency. By 9:11, the place was empty. He exhaled slowly, fists tight in his lap. The pattern wasn't speculation anymore. It was protocol. Someone inside the precinct was feeding intel directly to the operation, real time. Elijah leaned forward and typed a single word into his encrypted folder. Confirmed. He scanned back through the footage. Frame by frame. One of the men wore a sheriff's department sweatshirt, black hoodie, badge logo faded on the sleeve. It didn't prove identity, but it narrowed the field. This wasn't just negligence. It was collaboration. Elijah didn't smile, didn't swear, just reached for burner 2. He recorded a new tip. Voice low and gravel-pitched, filtered through distortion. Truck headed east on Farm Road 6. 2 men, 1 crate. No tags. He pressed send. If the truck disappeared again, if the tip got leaked, if the precinct failed twice, then it was no longer a suspicion. It was a system, and he knew exactly how to break one. The front door hissed shut behind him, catching stale air and half a conversation. Elijah stepped into the same cramped lobby, same buzzing lights, same coffee-stained counter, except this time, he wasn't alone. A mic ran beneath his collar, a pin-sized camera sat behind a shirt button. The receiver pack in his waistband pulsed once. Love feed, synced encrypted. A van 3 blocks away lit up with quiet movement, as federal tech agents leaned in over glowing monitors. Elijah adjusted his sleeve, slow and deliberate. Behind the front desk, CPL, Mason looked up with the same lazy smirk. "Well, I'll be damned," he said, nudging the younger deputy beside him. "It's CIA again. Come to check our Netflix queue." The deputy snorted. "Lemme guess. Trafficking ring at the Taco Bell this time." Laughter again. Lazy. Dismissive. Elijah didn't blink. Just here to follow up on the last report. Same site. New activity. CPL. Mason leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. You ever think about getting a job, man? All this cloak and dagger stuff, you should at least be getting paid. The younger cop added, better yet, write a book. How I took down the whole town by Tuesday. Bet Oprah would eat that up. Elijah's tone didn't shift. There's footage of the warehouse move. Same vans. Same pattern. You ignored the last tip. Want me to pull it up? Mason waved him off. I'm not watching your TikToks, man. Drop the fantasy. You're not Langley. Elijah tilted his head just slightly. The nod was small, intentional. 3 blocks away, the van's feed lit up. Audio spiked. Screens captured every laugh, every word. Agent Keller in the van spoke into the comm. We're green. Signal clear. Keep rolling. Elijah placed a folder on the desk. It didn't have to be real. It just had to look important. A decoy of evidence. Timestamps. Grainy photos printed on matte paper. Mason didn't touch it. Look, he said, tone shifting into mock patience. We'll file a note or something, okay? But you come in here again trying to play Jason Bourne. We're gonna have a different kind of conversation. The deputy chuckled. Better bring your decoder ring next time. Elijah nodded again. Appreciate your time, he said calmly. He turned, stepped back toward the door. The laughter resumed. But the signal didn't stop. Back in the van, agents scrubbed audio against existing complaints. Voice matches. Call logs. Suppressed tip forms. They were building a timeline, one mistake at a time. Outside, Elijah paused at the bottom of the precinct steps. He didn't smile, didn't gloat, just reached into his pocket, tapped the earpiece once, and whispered one word. Confirmed. This wasn't observation anymore. This was evidence. The raid hit just after 7 o'clock a.m. No sirens, no warning, just blacked-out SUVs and federal agents moving like clockwork. The warehouse doors were breached in under 60 seconds. Inside, crates stacked 5 deep, unregistered weapons wrapped in plastic, stacks of foreign bills bundled tight, and a duffel marked with initials tied to a trafficking syndicate. Homeland had been chasing for 2 years. No one ran. They didn't have time. By 7:43, the evidence truck was full. By 8:10, the call came through, proceed to phase 2. The precinct never saw it coming. Doors flung open. Boots hit tile. Agents in navy jackets and tactical vests fanned out, sealing exits, tagging servers, locking file rooms before the coffee had finished brewing. Officer Morales dropped his cup mid-sip. The chief's hand froze halfway to the phone. Someone yelled, "What the hell is this?" But no one answered, because the answer was walking through the front door. Elijah Ford. Not in jeans, not in a hoodie, in full federal tactical gear, windbreaker zipped, DHS credentials on a lanyard, service stripes beneath his name. He walked in steady, unshaken, the weight of silence trailing behind him like a shadow. CPL, Mason looked up from his desk and stopped breathing. "You remember me?" Elijah asked. The voice was the same, but now it carried weight. Mason opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. You're with them." Elijah held up the badge. Senior Analyst, Joint Trafficking Task Force. Embedded Observer. The younger deputy, now pale, took a step back. "You set us up." "No," Elijah said. "You set yourselves up. I just hit record." In the locker room, agents had already found it. A burner phone, hidden under a folded undershirt, still warm. Battery at 89%. Text threads open, coded messages that linked back to the very van that slipped past them 2 nights ago. The name on the locker, Deputy C. Langdon. A search of his patrol car found the same hoodie worn in the warehouse feed. In the glove box, a wad of cash wrapped in foreign currency bands. Langdon was cuffed quietly by 2 agents, his face blank, as Mason stood frozen in the corner. "You laughed," Elijah said, stepping closer. "When I tried to warn you." No one laughed now. He turned toward the main room, where a dozen officers stood speechless, watching their precinct come undone. "This isn't just a raid," Elijah said calmly. "It's accountability." He didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. Truth has its own volume, and in that moment, they all heard it. The footage ran on every network before noon. Agents sweeping through a small-town precinct, crates lined up outside a warehouse. And in the middle of it all, Elijah Ford, standing tall in federal gear, calm as ever. The headline beneath his image read, "Military Intelligence Analyst Exposes Corruption in Georgia Precinct." Commentators buzzed. Think pieces bloomed. Former officials weighed in with hindsight that arrived years too late. But Elijah didn't watch. He was already gone by the time the story hit the evening news. He spoke only once on record, standing at a quiet press podium, flanked by 2 federal officers and a DHS SEAL at his back. He didn't read from notes, didn't pace, just looked out at the sea of cameras and said, "Respect isn't about uniforms. It's about listening, especially when someone doesn't look like your definition of authority." He paused, let it sink, then stepped away without taking questions. The audit began the next morning. Every unsolved complaint, every mysteriously closed case, every report flagged, unsubstantiated. Within 24 hours, Internal Affairs swept the precinct office clean. Langdon was already in federal custody. 3 other officers were placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The chief resigned quietly. No statement, just a signed form and an emptied desk. Community forums filled up. People started talking again, louder this time, about the stops that never made sense, about the disappearances that got brushed aside, and about the man who came back not to fight, but to reveal. By the end of the week, new training mandates were announced. Federal oversight initiated. A civilian review board sworn in by the county. Elijah didn't attend those meetings, didn't stand in the spotlight. Instead, he stood on a patch of grass just outside city limits. A quiet cemetery, lined with oak trees. The sun low behind him. He knelt beside a gravestone, faded by wind and rain. A.V.A. Ford, beloved daughter, forever 17. His hand rested on the stone, not trembling, just there. "I kept looking," he whispered. "You didn't disappear. You were erased." He paused, closed his eyes. And now the people who looked away, they don't get to anymore. The wind picked up, soft through the trees, rustling the edges of an old marching band photo tucked beside the grave. He stood slowly. No ceremony, no final salute. Just a man who saw what others refused to, and made sure the world saw it too. They laughed. They dismissed. They looked the other way. But Elijah Ford didn't just come to report a crime. He came to dismantle a system built on silence. If this story moved you, if you believe truth deserves a voice even when it's quiet, subscribe to Black Roots and help amplify stories of courage, justice and quiet power that can't be ignored anymore. Hit the bell so you never miss a reveal. Share this if you believe silence protects no one, and exposure changes everything.